When I first started painting, I grabbed these two acrylic paints from the art store and figured I'd be able to make the perfect purple. One red, one blue, mix them together, get purple. Simple, right? Except that is not what happened. Instead of the purple I wanted, I got this weird brownish dirty color, so naturally I assumed that I was a terrible artist. But the problem wasn't my skill level or the paint itself. It was that I didn't understand what was going on underneath those specific colors that was causing the color to become muddy. So in this video, I'll be walking you through the secret for how to mix all kinds of purples in acrylic, from vibrant jewel-like violets to neutral dusty mauves. Let's start with diving a little deeper into the real issue behind your color mixing woes, which is the undertone of your paints. An undertone is the subtle secondary color that a paint shifts towards when mixed or lightened. It sits underneath the dominant color that you see in the tube. So it's not just a red, it's a warm red or a cool red. Every paint is operating on two levels. On the surface, you have the dominant color, but underneath that, there's a second color quietly at work, and it shapes how the paint behaves as soon as it meets another color on your palette. Let's see this in action using these four paints, two reds and two blues. I'll be using my favorite split primary colors, which are Quinacridone Magenta, Cadmium Red Medium, Ultramarine Blue, the red shade, and Phthalo Blue, the green shade. Let's add these to a wet palette and add a little titanium white to each color. Adding white makes the undertone easier to see. Let's look at the Quinacridone Magenta with white added. See how it immediately becomes a cool pink, almost lavender? That's its blue undertone coming through. Now let's try the Cadmium Red Medium. With the titanium white, it goes warm and peachy. That's its yellow undertone. Over to the blues. The blues are a little more obvious because the undertone is actually part of their names. Ultramarine Blue red shade has a red undertone, and Phthalo Blue green shade leans strongly towards green, even though it appears more like a cyan until mixed with other colors. Four paints, four very different undertones, which become super visible as soon as we add white. This is why you may be struggling with your purples, because the undertones in your paint colors may actually be incompatible with your mixing goal. This connects directly to something called color bias, which is really just the practical side of understanding undertones. Color bias refers to the tendency of a color to lean towards another hue on the color wheel caused by its undertone. And there's a simple rule that makes all of this click into place. Colors with similar undertones that lean towards each other will mix vibrant, high chroma results. Colors with opposing undertones will mix muted colors. Let's see how this looks in action when we start to mix these colors into each other. Let's start with the Cadmium Red Medium. I'll add it onto the chart in its purest form before mixing it into Ultramarine Blue. Right away, we can see that we're getting a muted purple that borders on brown. If you were trying to get a vibrant color, you'd probably be pretty disappointed with how this is emerging. These purples are dull because of Cadmium Red's yellow undertone. On the color wheel, yellow is complementary to purple since it sits directly opposite. Complementary colors neutralize each other, so that yellow is quietly dulling the purple from inside your mix. Here's where it can get a little more complicated. A warm color can have a cool bias, and a cool color can have a warm bias. Now, as a reminder, warm colors are red, orange, and yellow, and cool colors are green, blue, and purple. Cadmium Red Medium is a red, so it's a warm color. Since its undertone is yellow, it also has a warm bias and leans towards orange. However, even though Quinacridone Magenta is technically a warm color since it's a red, the blue undertone gives it a cool bias, so it leans purple. Let's see how this looks on the board by also mixing it into the Ultramarine Blue. As you can see, this is where we get these vibrant, high saturation purples. These purples are also supported by Ultramarine Blue, which is a cool color with a warm bias. Because the ultramarine has a red undertone, and red is a warm color, it leans towards purple. As a result, the magenta and ultramarine are leaning towards each other. Both the dominant color and the undertone are mixing a purple, and everything is pulling in the same direction, which is how we get a high chroma mix. Keep that in mind because it's about to explain everything we see when we switch the blue. By the way, if you're finding this useful, I would love to have you in my course, Color Mixing with Acrylic, where I walk you through a series of real-time exercises resulting in this gorgeous final guidebook. The course covers undertones and color bias in great detail, along with many other color mixing concepts. So if you want to take your color theory to the next level, be sure to check out the link below. Now let's see what happens when we bring in the phthalo blue, starting with cadmium red medium. We already know that the cadmium red has a yellow undertone, which dulls purple since it's a complementary opposite. The phthalo blue, which has that strong green undertone, is pulling in the opposite direction on the color wheel. So we have red and blue mixing on the surface, but yellow and green mixing in the undertones. As a result, we wind up with more of a brown color on the red side and a beautiful greenish teal on the blue side. Phthalo blue, like cadmium red, is also very strongly pigmented, so a little goes a long way, and the undertones in both these colors are equally powerful. As a result, we get these colors, which to me don't even look slightly purple, but are still beautiful. And this is a really important point. A muted color is not a bad color. In fact, your painting may not actually need a bright, clean purple, and instead might require a color that's more subdued. But if you're going for something vibrant and got this instead, that's genuinely frustrating, and hopefully this video offers a clear explanation as to why it's happening. So now let's see what happens when we combine the Quinacridone magenta with the phthalo blue green. At first blush, when we start to add the phthalo blue green to the magenta, it doesn't look all that different from the ultramarine blue. Now you do have to be careful when you're mixing with how much of this blue you're adding in, just because phthalo blue has such a powerful pigment load. But this purple is actually nice and saturated. As we move from left to right, it reveals itself to be a little darker and a little more blue, but still a high chroma purple. So what gives? The secret is in the magenta itself. Magenta doesn't introduce yellow into the mixture, so there's nothing on the magenta side to dull the purple. Even though the phthalo blue-green shade has a strong green undertone, in practice it just results in a cooler, bluer purple that's still high in saturation and jewel-like. What I've been demonstrating today is the foundation of a split primary palette. Instead of having just one red, one yellow, and one blue, you would have a warm and cool version of each primary on your palette. This gives you the most amount of color mixing versatility since you can mix colors that lean together for maximum saturation or intentionally mix colors that pull away from each other to mix a deliberately neutral tone. However, if you're the kind of painter who likes to use a more limited palette, you can still get good range with your colors. Let's just say you needed a more neutral purple, but all you have is Quinacridone magenta and ultramarine blue. So you would mix your purple and wind up with this. All you need to do to soften this is introduce a little bit of that complementary yellow opposite, and in this case, I chose cadmium yellow light. Let's see what happens when we mix that in. First, the purple begins to warm into a beautiful dark rich mauve before switching into a brown, then yellow ochre, before emerging as a light yellow. This goes both ways, and you can use purple to neutralize yellow and yellow to neutralize purple. If you have any color mixing questions or things you've been struggling with, be sure to leave me a comment below. And if you want to check out my top 5 acrylic color mixing mistakes, you can watch that here. Thank you so much for watching. Happy purple mixing and happy painting!